I knew this day will eventually come. I've never been subtle on how much hatred I carry for this. I've taken as many chances as I could to express my utter disgust for it, but never went full in depth as to why I have such genuine feelings against it. So it's time to face my destiny and talk about my most hated game of all time. That's right, it's time I talk about Fire Emblem Fates. Oh god, what do I do now? What do I do now? Aha! This should work! How about I talk about Dead Rising 4? Hate is such a strong word. It carries much more impact than I don't like this thing. To hate something is to be filled with utter rage at the sight of it. And what we have here is a prime example of that. But what sets apart this, my most hated game of all time, to this, my other most hated game of all time? I've never played this one. And do you know why? When Dead Rising 4 was announced, I was ecstatic for it. I read so many interviews, saw the trailers, saw the gameplays, and because of that I knew how terrible it was gonna be. Because I figured out the developers had no idea what they were doing. But alas, you can't fully understand the quality of something unless you try it yourself. Because even if I don't like what I see about the product, I'm still open to the idea of it completely changing my mind. At the time that I'm recording this, I still don't play Dead Rising 4, so... here's hoping for the best. Here's a picture a friend took the exact moment I got this game. Look at this guy's face, he knows that I fucked up big time. There is no turning back now, is it? Dead Rising 4 install has completed. Okay... That was fucking shit. But let's give this some order, shall we? Frank West, an intrepid freelance photojournalist, someone who will go through any length to get the scoop of a lifetime. But more than that, he's one of Capcom's most beloved characters. When Dead Rising 4 was announced, they really rubbed it in our faces that Frank West was making a return. Hashtag Frank is Back was an actual campaign to promote the game. Veterans of the series had more than enough reason to feel excitement for this. And in just 5 minutes, they were in for a big surprise. It all started out when it was announced that longtime voice of Frank, TJ Rotolo, will not come back to reprise his role as a character. And changing a well-established voice of a character is one thing. It has happened in the past. Fans didn't take this very well, but that was just the tip of what was to come. Because what they did to Frank as a character was...
Frank West, photojournalist.
Why should the public believe me? Because I'm Frank freaking West. I'm a goddamn hero.
Back in the land of the living, you're one tough cookie. Can you stand?
Yes! Oh, yes! You are one sexy little surveillance record. I'm gonna take you to a computer and watch you so hard.
All right, fine. Give me your gun. Come on. I'm the reason you just got hurt. Let me help.
I'm not doing that either.
That's not what I'm here.
Shut up!
Oh, hey, hold up. My guys have taken a hit. They need a ride back to Tom.
Yeah, sorry. Wish I could. Got things to do. Let me guess. You messed with my camera again, right?
You're a quick one.
That's what she said. Worst threesome ever!
Frank is cooler, he's tougher, a little wiser, but he's still Frank.
This guy's idea of someone cooler is a childish asshole with no care for others who feels the need to show terrible jokes every 5 seconds. Not even the other characters in the game can tolerate him.
You don't actually care what's happening to these people, do you?
All right. We need cover. That hotel looks good.
3 stars at best.
You ever stop clowning?
Huh. He really is an asshole.
If even they find Frank annoying, shouldn't that raise a few red flags? Some people may not care for that, but let me set up a few examples. DMC Devil May Cry and Metroid Other M. They are both heavily despised games who share one thing in common: the awfulness of their main characters. Everybody hates El Donte. Nobody cares about a Samus Aran who can't think for herself. A story-driven game not only needs an interesting plot, it also needs engaging characters. Dead Rising 4 lacked that, and the end result was that at no point I knew what was going on. I can't give you a decent story summary of this game because nothing stuck with me. If the main characters don't care about the events that transpire, then why the hell should I? Dead Rising used to be a franchise that struck a great balance of tones. It knew when to take itself seriously, and it always found the right time to throw some crude humor.
But never forget, chump, I'm number one! Yeah, you're on fire.
I love that line. Their stories weren't the best ever told, but they were the little extra I could look forward to. They helped to the overall enjoyment of the games. 4 is like a bad fanfiction, where the writers aim to make the most unlikable main character armed to the teeth with jokes that only a middle schooler can find funny. And they achieved that. And it all came at the cost of butchering a better respected face from Capcom. Because every time Frank West opens his mouth, the only thing that goes through my mind is...
Here we go! Not funny! Different rap!
DMC and Metroid Other M may be very hated games by their fans, but with them you can find people who will, at the very least, defend their gameplay with solid arguments. Is that even the case with Dead Rising 4? First, let me get this out of the way. I heard before playing the game that Dead Rising 4 is pathetically easy. So with that in mind, I played the game in hard mode. At least for me, some extra challenge can make a lot of games much more engaging. So how was my experience? Dead Rising 4 is not even half fun. It's not even a quarter of fun as the other games. And it's not because of how many times I died. It's because Frank controls like utter shit. His movement is slippery and unresponsive. His animations are awkward and constantly cause him to crash on every wall. Picking items is harder than it should be because when there's too many of them close together, picking the one you really need becomes a matter of luck, and in the heat of battle this becomes much more evident. The simple task of changing a weapon was fucked up entirely, because the way in which you manage your inventory now goes against any natural instinct I would have while playing any other game, and after so many hours I never got used to it. The combination of these problems caused so many deaths that could have been easily avoided if only there was a real feel and flow in the controls. At the end of the game, I died 4 times more than I died in the entire series combined. And it's not just because of the controls, no. It is also because of how little physical feedback you get with damage. Yeah, being stopped right on the tracks by zombies could be annoying. Being struck in a barrage of bullets wasn't fun. But at the very least, I was getting a clear indicative that made me think, oh, well, maybe I should be more careful in my next approach. With Dead Rising 4, anything goes. Sometimes the zombies may decide to grab you. That makes sense. Other times the damage will come from mere contact. There's barely any recoil from getting shot with bullets. My health will plummet down at any given moment, and just when I noticed it, it was already late.
I am done!
For once, I agree with you, Dead Rising 4, Frank. And hypothetically speaking, if these problems were not to exist, or if I had played in normal mode, Dead Rising 4 just pales so much in everything. I thought to myself, well, if all else fails, I know I can get a lot of fun from killing zombies. There's a lot of them on screen and the ever fun combo weapons, so... what happened? There is no fun! nor satisfaction in playing this game. First, there's the awful controls I just talked about. But more than that, the combat has been reduced to a joke. And this is because fighting zombies just doesn't feel good. All the weapons have been stripped from their liberty. Remember in past Dead Rising games when you could do whatever the hell you wanted with your items? Remember when you could use food as a weapon? When you could throw items you didn't need? Or when some weapons had specific gimmicks behind them? There's none of that here. You can't throw bladed weapons unless the game says you can. You can't use a hockey pole to throw discs anymore, or kick a soccer ball to make zombies drop like dominoes. This game effectively murdered the charm of grabbing everyday objects for self-defense and see what made them unique. And if there's something they all share in common, it's a severe lack of impact. Blunt weapons don't have a real force behind them. Bladed weapons don't feel as sharp as they used to. The variety of combo weapons is lower than in Dead Rising 3, and in just a matter of hours you see almost everything there is to offer, because most of them have a similar functionality, lack imagination, or are just slight variations of other existing combo weapons. There's an upgrade system like in 3, and I'll tell you right now, all you want are the extra inventory slots and the extra health. The other upgrades made no impact nor open new ways to play. And with that, I wasn't feeling rewarded for leveling up, and things were just getting worse. When I heard they were ditching the time limit, that baffled me a lot. One of the reasons I fell in love with the franchise was because it always had a certain degree of pressure in me, and that was achieved thanks to the time limit. I know there's people who didn't like it, but hear me out. Dead Rising as a franchise was built around killing zombies, saving survivors, and fighting psychopaths, all while having a time limit to take into account. You only needed to complete the main cases in order to get the true ending. Main cases were very forgiving, as they always gave you more than enough time to complete them. If you wanted to mess around with the game, there was nothing stopping you from ignoring the main story completely. Sure, you get a bad ending, but that was an opportunity to get more familiar with your surroundings and level up to try again later. Getting that S ending should be a reward to the player for simply playing well and having basic time management skills. Doing a perfect wrong was a testament of knowing the games inside out. I saw in an interview that the reason the time limit was removed was so players wouldn't need to do another playthrough to do everything the game has to offer. And that is such a dumbest mentality. If your game is good, and it's bursting with content, then I'll be really excited to go through it again, because I can expect future runs to play differently. Do you have any idea how many times I beat Dead Rising 2 in my teenage years? 5 times. And I'm not kidding. That was the first game where I got every single trophy because of how good it was. Dead Rising 3, with its 7-day limit, gave me more than enough time to do every mission in one playthrough. But thanks to how fun it was just to mess around in that game, I did a second playthrough with no hesitation. 4 didn't give me anything to want to go back, because I didn't enjoy the main adventure. I hated it, so I had no reason to even give it another shot. And okay, giving the player unlimited time could have made an impact if you actually had the content to back it up. Dead Rising 4 is easily the tallest and most starved game in the series. Every single side quest can be summed up as clear some zombies and that's it. Watch the survivors vanish from existence. No unique dialogue, no worthwhile rewards, no memorable events to accompany these missions, nothing. Frank's camera still fulfills its standard role, but now it also works as a detective tool. But these investigation sections only brought the game's pacing to a stop, and I felt no immersion while doing them. But the most insulting thing from this game were the bosses. What did they do to them? Psychopaths used to be amazing! In gameplay, each one of them used to play in very imaginative ways and had varied movesets to take down the player. In narrative, they were one-note villains that managed to leave an impact despite their simplicity. They were memorable because it was interesting to see how they turned out that way. Because of tragedy, to take advantage of the situation, because they are turbo virgins, or because just like the player, they are doing what they must to survive. They gave life to the world of Dead Rising. Ironic, I know. The maniacs in 4 are a joke, and an insult to what psychopaths were able to do in the past. They could have been something if only actual effort was put into them. But that's not the case here. They have a gimmick, they have some minions, and that's it. Every maniac has a very generic moveset, and the best strategy to fight them is hit them hard. No pressure, no excitement, no death. This game gave me none of that, other than a headache and immeasurable amounts of disappointment. Dead Rising 4 is easily the worst looking AAA game I've seen on the 8th generation of consoles. I mean, what the fuck? You can shit on 3's grim atmosphere as much as you want, but at least that one had detail in its models and environments. You will think they will improve on them for 4, but what you get is a game with a bleak atmosphere and washed-out colors. The town of Willamette is confusing to travel because there's zero sense of familiarity due to having a lot of samey areas and for lacking any recognizable landmarks. I dare to say this because after all the hours of torture I put myself through, I can't remember a moment where I wasn't constantly bringing up my map to find my objective. It doesn't have the simplicity of Willamette's Mall, the uniqueness of Fortune City, or the variety of Los Perdidos. I already mentioned character movements are awkward, but this also extends to the cutscenes, where facial expressions rarely reflect the emotions they are supposed to convey. And to bring back my argument of zombies not feeling as good to kill as before, that is thanks to the lack of detail in them. In past games, you just don't kill zombies, you tear them apart. They are like ragdolls that you can toy with in any way you desire. Something 4 is unable to replicate because of how weak its animations are and how little detail there is in the zombies, in their movements, in their variety, and in their dismemberment. And the presentation is just abhorrent. If I am not confused by the world map, I am being bombarded by a lot of text on screen. If it's not that, I am having trouble moving through the menus, or trying to change my weapons, or be blasted with nothing but glitches in every step. I won't pretend Dead Rising games were fully functional products with no fault, but 4 took the glitches to a whole new level. Here I am fighting this soldier and whoop, there he goes. Take this, you son of a... Oh my, are you okay? I'm sure they never playtested this shit. Also, the illumination is terrible. At first I thought it could have been a problem from my TV, but no! Looking at the footage, that's just how the game is. It's unnecessarily dark. And if you want to ask me about the soundtrack, yeah, there just wasn't anything. Again. Even if I despise something with all my being, I'll still be objective and give credit where it's due. And if I am fair, Dead Rising 4 has a few cool ideas. For example, throughout the world, you may come across some military cases that contain an exosuit. The exosuit is a body armor that increases Frank's raw strength and lets him carry objects he wouldn't normally be able to use as weapons. And if you combine the suit with the right machinery, you get a totally different gimmick. The suit only lasts for a limited time, but there are moments where you get unlimited use of it until you leave a specific area. And those were moments where I could feel some of the fun I have with the other games. And that admittedly made the final boss unique. Thanks to the exosuit, I could get at least one enjoyable fight, and I appreciate that. The other thing I quite liked was a staple of the series, and that's the endless barrage of references to other Capcom games. I'm a sucker for finding this, and 4 did a good job in carrying that tradition. In fact, it took it a step further. Capcom Heroes, an extra mode where you play the main story disguised as many characters from Capcom, each one carrying a moveset very reminiscent to who they are representing. I love the idea, but since I didn't like the game to begin with, I unfortunately didn't spend much time with this one, but hey, it cracked a few smiles out of me, so I guess that's saying something. And the last thing Dead Rising 4 did right was acknowledging the existence of Ghost Trick Phantom Detective with a custom of Sizzle. Wow! I adore this game! Sadly, not many people have played it, but go! I can't recommend it enough. Do you love Ace Attorney? Play Ghost Trick. That's all I'll say because I am getting sidetracked, but that's because I really love that game. I just wish this reference was in a better game, you feel me? Oh well, let's grab this up. This game sucks fat gorilla dick. I played many bad games in my lifetime, but Dead Rising 4 broke a whole new barrier of awfulness, and I can say with no hesitation that it has segmented itself as one of my most hated video games ever. And it's not just because it's a terrible game, but also for what its existence means. So I just want to know, what happened? I know that Rising 3 is not exactly a fan favorite, but in my eyes, that game felt like a natural evolution of the series. It was rough around the edges and had a number of problems, but that game tried to prove it was next gen, while still being a fun experience, and I respect it for that. 4 was supposed to improve its faults, it had to be a better game overall, but it just went the exact opposite direction. It went backwards on every possible aspect. It looks worse, plays worse, it has no depth, no substance, no impact, it's filled to the brim with glitches that affect its functionality, it has an extremely forgettable story, it murdered one of Capcom's most iconic characters. It tried so hard to get away with its mediocrity by pandering to nothing but the first game, and it threw away everything that made a series so special to the point of becoming a generic zombie game. And that's putting it lightly, because as I said, not even killing zombies in this game feels good. If you can't even deliver on your most basic aspect, if you can't even give fun to the player, there is no other way to put it. You are a fucking failure of a game. So I had to ask this once again. What the fuck happened? Was this game rushed, or were the developers just incompetent? I can't say for certain, but I'm very inclined to believe it was the latter. Check out the previous works of the lead developers. Just watch the interviews and you can tell the director has no idea what's the essence of Dead Rising. I wouldn't be surprised if this guy only played the first game once and called it a day, then saw that Frank West was really popular and said, that's all we need to sell the product, and then went to Reddit to hire clowns for this game. Another thing that convinces me is this.
Yeah, you know what, the game, we get a lot of feedback. Of course, we can't respond to everything. But we really try to at least acknowledge that. We get a lot of it in. And it's important because the people who play our games, they're who we're making the game for. So we have to please the most people that we can.
He says stuff like that so many times. And that is so wrong. Look, it's okay to listen to fans, but you need to draw a line. Because if you try to appeal to every single person, then you'll have a clash of ideas and lose focus. Because most of the time, fans don't even know what they want. Remember when people thought Metroid Prime was gonna be ass because of its first-person perspective, and now it's widely considered one of the best games of all time? Remember when Capcom made the Resident Evil 2 remake in third person because they thought fans wouldn't have liked the fixed cameras and people ended up loving said remake? As a director, you need to have the pants to do what you believe is best, not what others tell you what it is. That lack of leadership is what brought this disaster of a game, a permanent stain on Dead Rising. But what is done, is done. Nothing can be changed now. All I can do now is hope that someday there'll be some hope for Dead Rising. So in the meantime, I'm gonna hunt those responsible for this atrocity. Capcom Vancouver. Unfortunately, they are defunct now, but I have a good idea of where to find them. So, goodbye. Sometimes, you have to do sacrifices for the greater good.